If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, the second step I'll take is to require that 10% of our energy comes from renewable sources by the end of my first term. In 10 years, we will eliminate the need for oil from the entire Middle East and Venezuela. In 10 years' time.
President-elect Obama has said he wants 10% of all American power to come from renewable sources by 2012. Things coming from solar, from wind, from hydropower, geothermal.
Biomass, and solar.
Not counting hydropower, Americans use 2.5% power comes from renewable sources.
But getting up to 10% of total generation from 3% now, I think will be ambitious. We might get it simply by shoving demand down. That is, if we have a protracted recession, then our total energy demand may contract.
Those industries are growing exponentially more than any other power industry right now. Last year we saw 45% growth from the wind industry alone.
We do have rapidly growing wind generation of electricity. Matter of fact, it's growing so rapidly that in Texas, 20% of the time this year, they've had a negative price. There hasn't been a market for it.
So in order to go from that 2.5 to 10% within the next 4 years, each of those industries would have to grow about the same, about 40%, which we're already on track to do.
As we develop new sources of energy and electricity, we will also need to modernize our national utility grid so it's accommodating new sources of power, more efficient and more reliable.
The problem with renewable is that the power centers for wind and solar specifically are very far from the consumption centers. So the sun shines brightest, the wind blows hardest in the central states, on the central plains, in the southwest. You have many of the major cities on the coasts, in the north and in the south. So getting that power to all the consumption centers is something Obama's just said he wants to create a national grid. That is an enormously large undertaking.
You need a grid. You need some power lines running to the places that are windy, and right now we don't have that in the Midwest mountain region where Boone Pickens wants to put his wind farms. You can put up the windmills, which are huge, by the way, and they take up huge areas. But right now we don't have the connection to get that electricity to the East Coast or the West Coast.
It really is the ultimate NIMBY issue, not in my backyard, that people don't want power lines coming through, running from state to state to state. That's something that has to be seriously addressed before he can talk about running an entire country, a majority of the country, on renewable energy.
The challenges for renewable energy are that it's not cost effective yet, for the most part. It takes huge subsidies.
It does cost more in the short run. Investing in solar and wind, they're not the cheapest alternative.
Right now, solar energy cannot generate that much electricity. It's very expensive. Wind energy is probably the most competitive. In places, some places, of course, have the geothermal, but you can't expand that unless you have magma underneath where you can get the hot water. If we're really looking for energy security and independence, we don't want to kill coal, which almost all of these CO2 restrictions and green energy initiatives, the energy source that gets hit hardest is coal.
If we can really raise the amount of energy produced by renewable sources, that's going to save a lot of money in the future. The problem, of course, is the short term, when fossil fuels, burning coal, even clean coal, and of course drilling for oil, are the cheaper alternatives now and provide the most security at the moment.